So, okay, they keep wrestling, and then they're on the fringe of the kingdom. This wrestling match between this pairs of opposites takes them to the edge of the kingdom, and they end up in the elephant's graveyard, right? And there's bones everywhere. And so now they're out into the kingdom of death. And what that means is that these two kids, as they've grown up, encounter death, right? They go outside the light, and it's very, very shocking for them. They're very curious about it, obviously. They go to explore the skeletons and all of that, even though they were told not to. But their curiosity, they can't stay away from death. They're too curious about it. And so they develop knowledge of death. And then, of course, out there in the Deadlands is where the hyenas are. And that's exactly right, because hyenas are scavengers, right? And they can break bones with their teeth. They're really, really quite the animal. And, you know, you kind of have a shudder of repugnance when you see those things. And I think it's partly, I mean, we shared an evolutionary landscape with the ancestors of hyenas for a very, very long time. And like vultures too, you know. You couldn't imagine something that would be more well designed to look like it was a horrible thing than a vulture, right? And there's this weird concordance, and crows and ravens are like that too, carrion eaters, you know. Eagles are kind of an exception, but they look just as creepy as they are, which is really quite interesting. And of course, hyenas fall into that category, and they laugh too, which is, you know, really? You also have to laugh, really, with all these other things you have going for you? And anyways, the hyenas are enemies of lions, and they can take lions down. They're tough things, and you know, they not one hyena, obviously, but a bunch of hyenas can give a lion a pretty damn rough time. And these little lions are really no match for the hyenas, and so they get threatened very, very rapidly. And one of the hyenas, of course, is just completely out of its mind. And one of the things that's really interesting, and you see this with the Muppets too, there was often a puppet that was like a crazy puppet, and its eyes would move in different directions. You know, and one of the things that happens with people who are schizophrenic is they show involuntary eye movements. And it's because you have a brain center that controls your eyes voluntarily, and you have another one that controls them involuntarily. So you can see that. Look ahead and try to move your eyes smoothly back and forth. You can't do it. You'll see that they jerk, hey? But if you put a finger in front of your face and then do this, they'll move perfectly smoothly, and that's because you're using different eye control centers, one voluntary and one more involuntary, and the involuntary one is actually more sophisticated. And so in schizophrenics, the involuntary eye control centers tend to disrupt the voluntary eye control centers, and that's likely part of the hallucinatory process, you know, because you have the ego in the schizophrenic that's being disrupted by processes underneath, fantasies and that sort of thing, and that looks like it's reflected in involuntary eye movements, like dream movements. So anyways, so much for the crazy hyena, and they're in real trouble. Now the king's eye, who's supposed to be keeping an eye on this and was supposed to be watching Simba, is trying to intervene, but I mean, look at him. He's like a delicious little bird, and so that's not working out very well. Anyways, and then you see this immediate juxtaposition of the domain of death and the hyenas with hell, right? And everyone looks at that and they think, well, they know exactly what that means. It's no surprise to anyone that that happens. And I suppose that's partly because on the veldt, where we evolved in large part, but not by no means all part, fire was an ever-present danger in the grasslands, right? And so that's a good example of hell.